And my other thought is you listed a handful of these frameworks, right? So was there a reason one didn't? I mean, you mentioned why some didn't work, like the SMART, but what made you decide to? Is the one you came up with, is it totally custom, or I mean, it takes bits and pieces, but it's your own framework? Is that right?
Yeah, and it takes pieces of that to reconcile the different parts.
Okay.
Yeah. I think a SMART goal is one component of the whole process, and laying stuff out and understanding your why. But what I can say, I was just trying to look through my notes, and I couldn't find it. But when you were saying there at the end, I was thinking about when you set a goal, if you're committing to that goal, you're saying no to other things. So if you're doing that instead of other things, and so recognizing what you're saying no to, and what you'll be giving up, and what you'll stop doing or doing that you'll be doing this instead of, because that you haven't been taking pauses in your life. Like, you've been living all the minutes of your life, and so if you're doing something new, you're doing that in place of other things. So just recognizing what you're saying no to.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I would like to dig into that more too, Matt. Awesome. NH, welcome. Let's see, he might be frozen. You there, NH?
Yes.
Awesome. Hey, welcome to the call.
Thanks.
Cool. Any other thoughts or feedback? Okay. So, as far as who struggles with making too many goals? Anybody want to speak to that specifically?
I'll actually speak to it. I didn't raise my hand, but it's because I've, over the years, I think figured it out a little bit better for myself, right? Okay. So I've had different ways, I've read Brian Tracy's book 4 or 5 times, and I have different places where I've kept notes on it. Like, I'm totally bought into this concept and everything. And over the years, I've kind of found what works for me. This is for me as an individual, right? Like, it's very tailored to me, but it's been like trial and error figuring out what works for me. And so I've simplified a little bit in what I'm focusing on at any one time from a goal standpoint. I still have a pretty lengthy list of goals that some are short term, like for me, short term is a couple months. Some are 1 year, some are like 5 year. Like, I have some goals that I set 3 years ago that are 2025 goals. So like, they were, at the time, they were 8-year goals, right? I'm still working towards those. And so I'm still aware of them and working towards them, but I've really brought it like this year, I'm very defined on what are the specific things I want to do. And like, here's my little book, right? Like, it's that little section, like, it's not very much, but there's a lot into each one of these, but it's not, and they all go towards what I want to do, but it's not a ton, right? And it's kind of like the Darren Hardy compound effect concept, where doing a little bit each day, and also Atomic Habits talks a lot about this, like doing a little bit each day to make sure that you're consistent and just doing something towards that goal on a daily basis is much more likely to get you there than trying to do these big blocks of time, like saying, okay, I'm going to spend this entire day just on this one thing. And I've tried to do that in the past, where I say I'm going to spend my entire day on this one thing, and I kind of get burned out, or the other stuff, I feel like I'm neglecting it, a variety of things. And so I'm pretty excited this year, because what I think I've come up with for myself is going to get done, because it's fairly simplistic, but I'm hoping to be really consistent with it as well.
Yeah. Awesome.
I have something, Dale.
Yeah.
So I've realized that my goals are much more accomplishable when I have a reward. And then so the challenge I have is I don't have a good way to reward myself where I'm not taking away from myself. So my wife, for example, she makes goals, and she's like, okay, if I do this, then I'm gonna get $100 to spend at the store or whatever. Well, that's my money. I'm giving it to her, and she doesn't feel like that's her money. So she's totally cool taking that $100. If I reward myself with some type of money or like a vacation, I'm paying for that out of my own pocket. So it doesn't work at all. There's absolutely no effect on me to say, look, if you accomplish this goal, you're going to take $200 and go buy a new pair of boots or something. Because it's my money. It doesn't work. So I'm trying to figure out how do I get goals where I see a reward that doesn't come from me personally, and working with, trying to figure out my wife, like, what can I reward myself with that I wouldn't normally get? Because I could, that's not coming from myself. So that's been a big one for me, is I need the carrot to accomplish the reward. And when I have a meaningful carrot, I typically can accomplish the goal. I wish I had more, willpower to say, well, I'm going to benefit, I'm going to be more healthy, or I'm going to be stronger if I lift weights, but I just know at this point it doesn't work.
I'll give you $100. How's that?
What's that?
It's not out of your pocket. I'll give it to you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't want to go in. When we do competitions with people and people are putting in money, me and my wife, we crush it because it's not our money. But if it's like my own cash, it doesn't work at all. So I think it's difficult trying to put that reward, especially when I ran a business, my goals were related to money, and I accomplished them because I was making more money. Now being, self-employed and kind of, not a lot of, direct, if I invest in something, I'm gonna get money out. It's harder to find those goals financially because it's just not there yet. Because I don't have a business that's, if I put 3 hours into it, there's no return on it yet. So, I think realizing if you can find for yourself some type of reward that is meaningful to you, then in some ways, some goals work in that way. So that's my 2 cents. So for me, it's finding the reward, the carrot.
Any other thoughts specifically to that? I had one, Andy. The thing that, and as far as the reward, I don't know, because I don't, I need to think more about that. But one of the ways that I've increased desire around something like diet, for example, was reading about it and studying it. So I know that after reading a couple books about dieting and fasting and cutting out sugar and whatever, with that new knowledge and perspective, I was a whole lot more naturally motivated. And that was the only motivator, was the knowledge that I added. So when I talk to people about fasting or diet or cutting out sugar, I mostly, it's hard to do that if you don't have any sort of reward or understanding, where when you go and read and get brainwashed for 12 hours about how sugar is going to, ruin your life, you're a little more willing to, I was in that case, that worked for me. So that's something that's worked for me, was just a lot of information.
Some thoughts I was having, as you were saying, is that, it's hard. It's more of an idealistic approach. Ideally that, you would just have that internal desire. If you are starting with why, and Dale, what you're talking about with that information, understanding, that greater understanding, then you have a deeper why, because you understand those things. And so then, I don't know. I don't have a great answer for you, but just if you can start with a good why and let that be your motivation, and that's the reason you want to accomplish the goal. It isn't to some other end. It's not, I want to make more money so I can eat cake, or I want to not eat cake so I can spend more money. If you're rewarding yourself by taking away from yourself in other areas, like you're saying, then that's not a pure motivation. Speaking in ideals here, I feel like ideally that's not where the motivation comes from. It comes from in the goal itself, and that would be a really good goal.
Yeah, interesting. Well, and maybe rewards are like that short term. Hey, I don't know anything about sugar, but if you give me $20, I'll not eat it for a week. It's a quick hack to making a change. So they're probably all strategies that you can utilize to get crap done, to make a difference. So as far as how many goals, so Ben, in my, and then we'll go back to what Matt was saying with the, what are you going to say no to? Who's read The One Thing, by the way? Awesome. Cool. So the areas where we naturally have buy-in and don't need rewards, like there's areas in all of our lives where we're already like doing really well and we haven't had to scheme around it too much, likely. Matt, I was telling the people, most people are on the call, he's spoken to his daughter in Chinese for the last 4 years of her life exclusively. He only speaks Chinese to her. And I said that he's probably spoken in English for 5 minutes. I don't even know if that's true. I know that he said a word here and there, but I don't know how much goal setting went in place. I think it just aligned so closely with his core and values that he maybe just made that decision. I don't know, Matt. How did that go?
Yeah, it was just a realization that I could do it one day, and then I realized that I wanted to, and I just did it. So that wasn't something that I worked at. I just did it.
So you didn't spend hours and hours on the goal setting process.
Right.
So I think there was no reward, there was nothing else. It was just something really closely aligned to the value. So they say like bet, take what's the analogy, bet on a horse in the direction it's going or something. You know what I mean? Like just go with things that are going that way already. That's not it. But what was it? Mitt Romney in his book, Turnaround, he talks about how his strategy with people was to put them in the place where they were naturally effective. And it wasn't trying to fix them or move them around or change them. Move them around, yes, but it wasn't to change them. We weren't going to make people different than who they were, more just identifying the true essence of the person, of what makes them great, and then trying to apply them into positions and situations that work really well to where they're working well and being successful. So I think that if somebody's, my brother Bruce, he's very fit, and I don't know how much time he's spent making goals around his fitness. He's just very interested in it naturally. He's always been inclined towards that, at least the last 8 years. So he does that. I think the trick has been, the example that comes to me was I'm not naturally a very thoughtful person. I don't consider myself very thoughtful naturally. I like to try to be nice and to do the right thing, but I don't necessarily go out of my way. I don't know. It just seems like a lot of times I'm so focused on doing my own thing. So when I went through this a goal setting process last year at the beginning of our first group, I wrote down a bunch of relationship goals. And one of them was to go out on a date every week, where I knew that I wanted to be more engaged in my relationship and make my wife feel more loved. That was kind of the hope and the overarching goal for it was make my wife feel more loved, to make my family feel more loved. And one of the tactics that I decided to employ was I just need to go on a date every week. I'm going to plan it every Friday. I'll find the babysitter. I'm going to do all the work to make that happen. And just through that 20-minute, brainstorming process, I was able to change the next year and go on 30 or 40 dates, right? Like most weeks we'd have something where we went on a date together. So I think that's where the power of the goal setting comes in. So going back to like how many goals.
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead, Dan. Yeah.
So a thought on that is you had a weekly goal, which theoretically you should go on 52 dates. You said you want 30-ish, right? I'd consider that a win, but some people would say, I missed the goal. I didn't make my 52. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm totally okay being mediocre in life. I don't think that's exactly the right way to say it, but I give myself breaks all the time. I think if I were to always be shooting for the stars and having too many goals and beat myself up, I think I would be a wreck. So I think that's why it works, because I'm kind of okay with, and I didn't set it, I guess, with, I want to go on a date every week. I didn't necessarily set it with that intensity of, you know, it has to happen, do or die, whatever, but just through the structure, it would just happen most of the time.
I have a thought.
Yeah.
I think this isn't, what I'm about to say isn't true for all goals. Like some goals are yes or no, or accomplished or not. Like 52 dates or anything less than 52 dates in a year is not achieving the goal. You know, I don't think that's an example of this type of goal. But if you have a good goal and a good why, a good motivation, and then good processes to do that, I think that the process can be the goal. Like those things that you're doing, like you're getting that benefit out of doing that. Like if you fail in the process this week and then you do it next week, and that's still good. Like, and that's still adding to your life by doing it this week, even though you didn't do it last week. And just like the process of it, like working out right now is good, even though I didn't do it. I missed yesterday or something. Like it's still a good process. And like I said, it's not applicable to all goals. Like if it's not everything's yes or no, black or white. I think the process can be the goal.
Awesome. Totally. And as far as my relationship went, that was, it's really hard to measure. Like my wife doesn't give me a net promoter score. You know, she's not like, I'd recommend Dale as a husband, 8.
Maybe she should. You could
8
get
out of 10.
Get a little kiosk with those buttons or something.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Happy, sad, as she leaves the house every day. It's hard to measure certain things like that. So I mostly wanted to build in processes like, spend time on a date night and a few other things I like that, Matt. A lot more of my focus was on the process, and I kind of let myself off easy. And I wonder what I'll think in 10 years, Dan, if I let myself off too easy or not. I'm not necessarily married to that. Maybe that's a flaw, too. Okay, so how many goals, back to Ben, that original question, and welcome to the call, Zach. So we've got, it seems like, if I were setting goals for my first time, I could speak very matter-of-factly, like, hey, I've got 12 goals and here's how it's all going to play out. But having tried and done and failed for 15 years in a row, I've realized that a lot of times goals are, as I continue to try to work on things, I slowly get incremental gains in each area. So I like to keep different goals on the docket, even if I'm not really serious about it. One way that we've talked about this in past groups, and I think in this one too, is you have a quadrant that says, what are you going to be amazing at? What are you just going to be good at? What are you okay being mediocre at and, or just average at? And what are you going to okay being poor at, for example? So, if all of us, they say, no, you should give 100% in everything. If that were the case, then all of us would look like bodybuilders, and all of us would, be perfect in all areas of our life. The fact is, like, we can't put 100% focus everywhere. So I think we just have to be true with ourselves and say, hey, how much am I focused on my physical health this year? How much am I focused on my business? How much am I focused on my family? How much am I focused on learning language? 5 years ago, I started learning French, and my goal was to be like mediocre, to be able to speak French in like 10 years. It wasn't even quantified. And I said, the process I can invest in is 5 minutes a day. So I have a language goal, and that's one of my many goals, but it's just a really small one. So just writing down identity. As we make these goals too, we kind of are changing our self-perception of who we are and changing our identity. It talks a lot about that in the one of the habit books that Dan just mentioned,
Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits. Yeah. Changing our identity. And my mom would do that all the time. We're not the kind of people that do this. We're not the kind of people that do that. We don't need jackets, So what kind of people are we? For me, I say I'm a linguist. And when I say in my goal setting, I'm a linguist, that's the hope. Then when I can turn on the Spanish subtitles in Disney Plus, as a linguist, that's what I do. So when we watch High School Musical 1, for New Year's, I'm reading the Spanish subtitles underneath because I'm a linguist. And I think that's one of the things I didn't mention in just the overview that I'll share with those that got on the call late, is with all this goal stuff, it's about changing our identity. So I want to write about all the different roles in my life and brainstorm the identity that I want to have in them, even if I don't arrive there today. So I want to say, I want to be this type of father and this type of person. And that also, a little later on, I want to get to the daily process of that. But I think it's really an exercise of identifying and our identity, just changing, defining who it is that we want to be, what that looks like, and then slowly becoming that person. That makes sense. Is that helpful? So let's see. What are you going to say no to? That's interesting. Did anybody this year stop doing things that they felt were not moving them towards their goal that they want to share about? Roscoe, go for it.
I left my job.
Please. Awesome.
And it was a very high compensated job. It's still very scary. I had to say no to reclaim my right direction for me and go back into business for myself and pursue my own ideas, passion. And and the biggest reason is because Benjamin Franklin, I guess, maybe who knows who originally said it, right? But the man who wants freedom and security deserves neither. And so I was stuck in that epitome of I've got to be my own person, but then I'm being told everything to do left, right, and indifferent. So my biggest thing is I took some courage and stand up and said, nope, I'm not going to tolerate the steady income, but I'm willing to go out and reinvent and re-go. So that to me was my biggest no for the year. There was a lot of little ones that led to it, and some of that was taking back my own identity and dignity. So it was a very powerful yet hard lesson learned.
Awesome.
And it can be real hard in 2020. We'll see how fast I can get this next one relaunched. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Good for you. Cool. Any other no's? I decided to stop. I took email off my phone maybe 3 months ago now. And what else? Email. And then I started scheduling, and I'm probably only 70% on this, but I started scheduling all my other distraction time. I read this book called Deep Work, and it made me think that any time that I was curious and wanted like cheap endorphins from like Facebook notifications or email or any sort of update, I basically kind of demonized all of those such feelings to say I never want to be the person who has to go and like be curious and let my mind wander. I wanted to be more deliberate. So I set an hour time during the day where I would basically do all things distracting, like, social media, email, E-Trade, all those types of things. And that's been pretty cool. But it's given me more space for my other goals. But I did that because I think I like social media more than a lot of other people I talk to. So I think I was especially susceptible to it.
I think I might have that problem. I like being liked. No.
Totally. Yeah.
So Dale, this is NH and group. One of the things I did, and Dale knows about this, but I'll just share with the others, is I said no to answering emails and phone calls after, say, 5 o'clock. But the biggest thing was when I went home. When I go home, I got a second phone number that became my personal phone number, and I don't share that with clients. And I leave my business phone and phone number at work, and that email, I don't have that email on my personal phone, and I just don't even think about it. And it's been really nice to have that disconnect when I go home and have family time. And like this, over this Christmas holiday, I just got back to work and I had like 40 something, messages, text messages and voicemails and that kind of thing. But that's fine. Like, I'm okay with that. When I'm with my family, I'm with my family, or doing personal things. And when I'm at work, I do work, instead of letting those kind of eat away at my time when I want to be focused on those other things. It has taken some time to get to kind of manage the anxiety of thinking, oh man, what am I missing? What call did I miss? What email am I not seeing? But I've gotten better at that. And I'm just kind of realizing that that's fine. That's the way it is. I'll take care of those items when the time is right. So that's been for me, that's been the biggest, no, I'm not going to do this anymore, type thing this year.
That's awesome. Well, and that one, I think that inspired a lot of the other people in the group to make changes too. Like that planted the seed of my putting my phone in a drawer at 6 p.m., which happens, 25% of the time. But last night it happened. It was one of the times when it happened where it's like, hey, phone goes away, check everything to, check the calendar for the next day, make sure I'm set. But then the phone goes away. And it wasn't as extreme as getting a new phone number and making that happen. And maybe that's why I'm still at 25%, that's why I'm still implementing, but that's super cool.
There is some anxiety for me and it's going down, but not, oh no, what have I missed? I mean, I definitely have had to deal with that. But for me, it's definitely been worth it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, and that was part of that probably helped me with my just creating the 1 hour a day for the emails and the notifications. I just realized that there's not as much for me out there anyways, that I can spend most of the time focused on my stuff without the distractions. Yeah. So that's awesome. Cool. Thanks, NH. Anybody else? So another thing I wanted to mention was, so really goal setting is about changing our identity. So we're the type of person who does different things than we do today, because if we continue to do what we're doing, we'll continue to get the same results. As NH is talking, Zach got on the call. There's several of you. Dan and I spent, 2 months together on a summer bike trip. A lot of change that I've made has come back to people that I've associated with. Little changes, whether it's, Zach, he was the first one that I knew personally that did a 7-day fast. And when I heard about it for the first time, I thought, that's kind of crazy. Like, wow, it's insane. And I did like a 2-day and then a 3-day, but eventually, I did a 7-day too. And that was because an interaction that I had with another person that was wanting to, become a better person too. NH talks about, hey, I got a whole new work phone. All those types of things are really inspiring. So I think it's important for us from a process standpoint in life to set up interactions with other people like this so we can be inspired. And I know that I'm going through my 4th group now of getting together with people like you. And that association's helped me a ton because just as we're talking about it, there's some of the best practices just kind of rub off on others. And it's been super cool. Okay. All right. So here's what I've done. Hold on one second. Hey guys, I'm on a call for a little bit. Network. Okay, let's finish up in the next 10 minutes. There's a few things. Okay. All right. So I shared with everybody the HATS model that I use, and essentially, it's the hope and the dream. That's your why. That's the big kind of aspirational. With physical fitness, that's the one that I kind of always share and joke about. It's like, hey, I want to be like Hugh Jackman and Wolverine. Buff, able to go and do anything, run down an icy road for 3 miles and be fine, and be able to, beat up the bad guy, right? That's like hard to quantify, but you won't know if you're ever there, if you're ever truly Hugh Jackman, but it's this very aspirational thing. Like, what would Hugh do? Oh, Hugh would totally not, Hugh would take a cold shower. That's just what he probably does, whatever. But it's that aspirational part. And then, okay, achievable outcomes. And that's where it gets to like, what would he be able to actually do? Well, probably I want to be able to run a half marathon whenever. I always want to maintain that level of fitness. Achievable outcome, I want to, lose 5 pounds. I don't want to. I want to stay the same weight. I want to, whatever. Achievable things. The tactics. So the tactics I've set up are, I want to row, and let's get into this one, for example. I want to row 1,000 meters a day, 6 days a week. So that's the tactic. Rowing is the tactic. The measurable is 1,000 meters, 6 days a week. On obstacles, a lot of times I found that in my morning routine, I wasn't able to, I was just missing that. Whether I was running out of time or I just didn't want to go downstairs and go to the rower. I wasn't doing that. So I went through the solution process, and this is where the value comes in just setting up any goal. As you go through the these different steps, you get really nitty gritty. I made a few solutions for myself. Okay, if I ever miss my rowing, I can do it before I put the kids to bed at night because I'm downstairs with them brushing their teeth. If I'm ever completely out of time, another solution is to just do a sprint for 1 minute. And then those were the 2 solutions I had. So after I did those solutions, I found 2 specific instances where, crap, I forgot to do my rowing. It was New Year's Eve. We went to sleep super late and I ran out of time for my morning routine. I went to the rower and I just did a sprint for 1 minute. And then another time I found that I rowed when I typically would not have. So I think as we go through and identify things that we want to do, the tactic we're going to use, and then go a step further and identify the obstacles that could get in the way, and spend time thinking about multiple solutions that you're going to make around those to make sure that they do happen, you're a lot more likely. And then when you're in that scenario, the likelihood of acting the way that you want to is higher. So there's that. We're running out of time for dialogue. I'll share this document that I've got with you guys, and I think I already shared the template for the HATS model. But one other thing, I wanted to just kind of outline everything that I'm doing to maintain my goals. And so I create goals as needed. And for me, that actually usually happens every time I start a new group. So every few months, I am going through this process with other people. So I kind of have been refreshing my goals then. But, however often you need to refresh them, I think in different times and seasons, it'll be more often or less often. Roscoe, as he's getting a new career going, he's probably going to be addressing this a lot more quickly. Dan, he's in his 5th year of running his other company. You may not need to do that as frequently. Dan Stewart may not need to. So, but I create the goal process. For years, I've been great at the weekly review. So I have a weekly plan every week where every week I have 2 hours blocked out on Friday afternoon and a backup time for Saturday morning, where that time to go in and make sure that I'm on track has been really helpful. I utilize my calendar well. Then the thing that I added a month and a half ago was, and this actually happened. So Blake Hansen in our call in this latest group, he talked about how he spends like an hour, 1 to 3 hours every day on his morning routine. And like an hour of that is spent on reviewing his goals. And it's not just his goals, it's his affirmations and everything else. And when he was talking about that, you could almost feel or sense everyone on the call kind of with their jaw dropping and thinking, what the heck? Like, you spend an hour every single day reviewing your goals? Like, we tried to do the Brian Tracy thing and it worked for 7 days of the 5 minutes writing your goals down. It kind of blew everybody's mind. And that's when I thought, well, if he can do it for an hour a day, I'm going to try it for a while for, 20 minutes or something. Right. And so he actually shared with me the document that he uses, and it's essentially, he's got a list of quotes that he goes through, and then he wrote down his different values and kind of the person he wants to be. And I found that it was, I thought if somebody told me affirmations like 2 months ago, I would have just kind of thought it was cheesy and not helpful. But having gone through the process for the last 2 months, month and a half, I found it pretty valuable. Different things like, today I'm going to make today an amazing day. I'm going to do this or that. As you're thinking about that for your day that you have right in front of you, you tend to look at your calendar and say, okay, how can I make this, how can am I living today like it's, an important day? Do I truly care about, uplifting others? If I do, who am I meeting with, and how are those interactions going to be different, and how can I make them as good as possible? Who am I going to lunch with? Who am I this or that? So you have the daily review and the HATS goals and everything. The thing that I missed was, and I'll make a more organized recap of all of this for everybody, but maybe a video. The weekly plan is where I take all the tactics and specifics from my goals. So when I plan each week, and I'll just, I'm going to share my screen for a second because we're done in 1 minute. Okay, let's see desktop too. Let's see. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, so weekly planning checklist. Every week, I'm looking, as I plan my week, I don't have to get these into every week, but these are basic reminders. Okay, plan a date night, find a babysitter, identify available nights to spend more time with Brittany, quality time, review calendar, when am I going to be driving? What types of phone calls, who do I want to be calling during those? Physical, powerlifting, endurance exercises. When am I going to play table tennis? When am I going to play pickleball? What's my adventure time? I have this checklist that I essentially go through when I plan my week, and I'll share that when I do a recap with everybody, just kind of going through that. But that's the current system that I'm using now. So several of us will have continued individual calls, so I'd love to kind of catch up on this. I hope this was helpful in giving an overview of the goal setting process. And if you have any follow-up questions, just ping me on email and we can go from there. And if you still have questions like, Dale, I want to know this, or you didn't go over this at all, please send it over and I'll make sure in the recap to include that in a more organized way. Cool. Awesome. Thanks for the head nods, everybody. It's good to see. It's good to see all of your faces. So if you have any feedback or other questions on goals, please send it over, and then I'll create a follow-up to send out to everybody with my notes from this call and the different 3 pages or something, the different research I did, and I'll send it all out to you guys in the next week.
All right.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thanks a lot, Dale.
Hey,
Thanks, Al.
everybody. Good to see y'all.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.